The woods can be peaceful, a place to escape from the world, but sometimes they hold secrets that are better left undiscovered. Tonight, I'll share 3 disturbing tales of hikers who encountered unimaginable horror in the wilderness. So, put on your headphones, dim the lights, and get ready for stories that will make you think twice about venturing into the woods. Our first story comes from a man named Mike, who enjoyed solo hiking trips to clear his mind. One autumn afternoon, he decided to hike an isolated trail in the Appalachian Mountains, far from any popular paths. The air was crisp and the forest was serene. At first, about an hour into his hike, Mike started to feel like he wasn't alone. He kept hearing soft footsteps behind him, but every time he turned around, there was no one there. He told himself it was probably just his imagination or the echo of his own footsteps, so he kept moving. As he climbed deeper into the mountains, the footsteps continued, getting closer and more deliberate. At one point, he stopped suddenly, hoping to catch whoever or whatever was following him off guard. And that's when he heard it, a slow, heavy breath right behind his ear. He spun around, but once again, there was no one there. The trees were still, and the silence was oppressive. He decided it was time to turn back, but as he retraced his steps, the feeling of being watched intensified. Shadows seemed to flicker between the trees, moving just out of sight. When he finally reached his car, he didn't stop to look back, driving away as fast as he could. Later, he found a message carved into the back of his hiking boots. "We walk with you." Mike never hiked alone again. Our next story takes us to a remote forest in the Pacific Northwest, where a couple, Tom and Sarah, decided to go camping. They set up their tent by a quiet lake, miles away from any other campsite. It was supposed to be a peaceful night under the stars, but things quickly turned strange. As they sat by the campfire, they started hearing whispers coming from the trees, faint and unintelligible. Sarah thought it was just the wind, but Tom insisted it sounded like voices. They shrugged it off and eventually went to sleep. In the middle of the night, Tom woke up to the sound of footsteps circling their tent. He listened in terror as the steps grew louder, then stopped right outside the tent's zipper. Gathering his courage, he called out, but no one replied. Suddenly, the tent began to shake violently, as if something was trying to get in. Tom unzipped the tent, flashlight in hand, but the forest was empty. No footprints, no movement, just silence. They spent the rest of the night huddled together, waiting for sunrise. When dawn finally broke, they packed up quickly, eager to leave. But as they prepared to leave, they noticed something terrifying. Their campsite was surrounded by a ring of stones, each marked with an X, as if they'd been claimed. To this day, they don't know who or what created that circle. They never camped in the wilderness again. Our final story comes from a group of friends who went on a weekend hiking trip in the deep woods of Colorado. They'd been hiking all day and decided to rest in a small clearing to catch their breath. The forest around them was eerily quiet, with no signs of wildlife, no birds, no insects, just silence. As they sat, one of them noticed movement in the distance, a tall, pale figure standing in the shadows of the trees, watching them. At first, they thought it was another hiker, but something about the figure felt off. Its limbs were too long, its face obscured by darkness. When they tried to call out, it didn't respond. Instead, it began to move toward them, gliding silently through the underbrush. The friends grabbed their gear, panicking as the figure came closer. As they fled, one of them tripped and looked back. The figure was now in the clearing, standing exactly where they had been, watching them with glowing eyes. It made no sound, just watched as they scrambled away, running until they reached their car. Later, when they recounted the story to locals, they learned about the legend of the Forest Watcher, a mysterious entity known to haunt hikers who venture too deep. Some say it's a spirit, others believe it's something far more ancient. The friends never returned to those woods, and to this day, They wonder what would have happened if they hadn't run. The wilderness is vast, mysterious, and often beautiful, but sometimes it holds secrets that are better left undiscovered. Whether it's footsteps that don't belong, a campsite that feels claimed, or a creature that watches from the shadows, these stories remind us that nature has a dark side. Until next time, keep your wits about you, and remember, sometimes it's not just animals lurking in the woods. This is the Tales Keeper, signing off.